In this video, we're going to talk about the A theme. No, not that A theme, that's the A team. We're going to be talking about the A theme to the waltz and the Belvedere suite. The A theme has some notes that can be kind of tricky, some fast-moving eighth notes, some kind of weird hemiola finger patterns. I mean, they're not weird, but if you look at it, we have a set of 3 notes that replicates 3 times over the course of 2 measures. So that's 3 against 2. That's what we call hemiola. But students may have not been exposed to any hemiola before, and they may not understand. So if we dig deeper into this, we see that the violinists have the trickiest part. Violists have some hemiola here. So 1, 2, 3, 3 against 2. Cellists just have moving quarter notes. They don't have any hemiolas, and bass players, they're just they're doing the boom against the chuck chuck, and the violas boom chuck chuck. That's not to say that the other parts aren't as important. It's just probably going to be more difficult to teach this to your violinist. Now, Isaac in his orchestra, when he wrote this, had violinists that are taking private lessons. How many violinists do you have that are taking private lessons in your orchestra? And if you've got a big orchestra program, that's great. Maybe there's some in your top orchestra that are taking private lessons, but what about your sub non-varsity D orchestra? How many of those kids are taking private lessons? Probably 0. And if you're programming Belvedere Suite, you probably don't have a lot of kids taking private lessons in that group. And if you do, it's probably just a few. So what does that mean? That means you're their only teacher. And if they're gonna get technique, they're gonna have to get it from you. So let's think about the technique that we need for that. And if you get the teaching companion, which is available on teachingorchestra.com, there's some ways to stage the technique so they don't have to learn all the technique at once. The other cool thing about the teaching companion is that everybody gets the technique, not just the violins. So if you're just playing this with your orchestra and you don't do something like this, then your violins get a lot better and your violas, cellos, and basses don't improve quite as much. So it'd be good if everybody could get the technique, I think. So the first concept that we just need to understand are the bowing patterns, right? And they should be able to play down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, etc. through here. That's not really the issue that they're going to have. It's the coordination of the slur and being able to get coordinated with this. And the simplest way to do this is just play open A and then add first finger B, and then open A, and it's like this for every instrument here. So can we coordinate the slurs between the right and the left hand? So what happens when a student, if they put down the first finger too early right here, well, it's just gonna rush a little bit, and that's not the biggest problem. The biggest problem is on the bow changes between the B and the next open A. So if they lift up their finger too early, we're going to get that open A and then get it again when we up bow. So it's going to sound like a little bit of a stutter. And if we put it down too late, we're going to get a B and then an open A a little bit later too. So we're just going to get a little hiccup there as well. And you can listen to that sound and see what you're hearing to help diagnose that. You can also slow this down to make it easier. It's easier to coordinate the technique and get both the left hand and the right hand working together when it's not so fast. It gives your students a better chance. When we start adding other fingers and we start working on these other patterns, and the violins, cellos and basses, uses all 4 fingers. Well, basses don't use third finger, but that's for a different reason. Any case, if they can't play the finger patterns correctly in the first place, how are they going to have a chance at playing it when it's this quickly? So at the beginning of the teaching companion, we have finger patterns, and it's important that they get all of these notes in tune. If they can't get these notes in tune, they're not going to have a prayer of getting the 8th notes in tune, right? So you got to tune each one of these notes and hold it out as long as you need to so that everybody's in tune before they move on to the next note. Otherwise, you're saying, oh, well, that's good enough, let's just move on. Oh, that's good enough, let's just move on. I don't care if you got to walk around your room and physically move everybody's first finger so that it's in tune. You got to show them what in tune means to you, and then they have to adopt that for themselves too. So we got the major pattern on the D string, and we've got the minor pattern on the A string. We also have the minor pattern on the E string too. For the first violins, they've got about 11 notes that are on the E string. All right, and then the violas, cellos, basses. They got stuff on the G string, but it's major pattern just like the D string. If you want, you can do the same pattern on the G string to get them going on that, but there shouldn't be too much problem. In modern education today, we have made a lot more advancements than what Merrill Isaac had to work with back in the 1920s, okay? Now we have QEEG, we have MRI, we have ways of looking at the brain and seeing what's being activated when we do things. And there's been a lot of people who have studied the brain and music, and it turns out that when you look to see how these neural pathways are built, they're reinforced through repetition, through repeated movements. And if you're repeating these movements over and over again, they become ingrained. So if you're repeating movements that are the right technique and where students are doing things correctly, that's going to pay off in the long run. It doesn't matter how fast or how slow you do this, okay? If you do it faster, it's not going to end up becoming better just because, the tempo's quicker. If they're using the wrong technique, it's just going to be sloppier. They have to do the exact same thing every time, and they have to be able to repeat it in order to solidify those neural pathways. So they create a neural pathway and they figure out how to get one neuron from your brain to the left hand or to the bow or whatever's happening, both actually. And that comes from one side of the brain than the other side of the brain, right? So these patterns are firing. Well, to make those neural pathways more efficient, what happens is something called myelin, a myelin sheath, is created around the neural pathway and it insulates it so that it's more efficient. Now, myelin is biologically expensive. Your brain's not going to start producing myelin just because, all right? And about 33% of our resting calories come from the brain itself. And through human evolution, we've made some trade-offs by having a bigger head and a bigger brain. In any case, went off on a tangent there, but you get the idea. Like, practice doesn't make perfect, practice makes permanent. Okay, you have to do things the exact same way again and again and again so that those neural pathways myelinate, and then they become more efficient, and then that's what your students are going to do. If they do it multiple times and it's wrong, well, that's going to be their technique. So slow it down, make sure it's right. And then this pattern 4, like every pattern they see in the Waltz is going to be here in the teaching companion. But here in pattern 4, this is going to be the trickiest one because they have a string crossing. So it's G, A, B. And this might be a little tricky because not only do they have to coordinate the slur and then add the finger like they did in the past, they also have to coordinate a string crossing. So if they cross strings early or if they cross strings late, you're going to end up with another hiccup in the sound. Now, one way to beat this is to try it in third position. And this is in the second violin part. And you might be playing this with an orchestra that's never shifted a day in their life. So you're going to have to make a decision, like, should I teach them how to shift or should we deal with the string crossing? And again, just like if you watch my last video, you have a type 1 error. You can go with the error of not teaching them third position and hoping that they get the string crossing, and maybe it's not as clean as it's ever going to be, or you can decide to try to teach them how to shift, and it might be out of tune, and they might struggle with that. They're also going to have to deal with a different finger pattern because they've got a whole step and a whole step, which means they're going to have a high third finger, and they may not have practiced any high third fingers. There's no other high third fingers in this whole movement because we don't have any C sharps on the G string, and the violas and cellos don't have any F sharps on the C string. But just think about it. If you were playing this, how would you finger that? You'd probably shift, right? Well, why? Why are you going to shift? Well, because it sounds better. It sounds cleaner. It's no big deal. So again, whether to shift or not to shift, maybe have them try it and see how it goes. And if they don't quite develop the technique quick enough and you're like, we're not going to be able to get this before the concert, well, then, hey, you tried. I do have an episode on shifting in season 1, a lot of different techniques about how to shift and some philosophy on shifting and some exercises to get your kids shifting well and be able to get them to use their ears so that they know how to shift and listen to what they're doing. The other way is you can cheat and you can have them play it down an octave with the second violins. Maybe not the whole section, but maybe a couple of them that just aren't playing very clean. You can have them play the open G, G, A, B, which is identical to the pattern on the A string that they've already played. It's just on the G string. Now, somebody might notice. One of the judges might notice and say, that sounds different. but more than likely, nobody's going to catch it. Okay, so is it against the law to rewrite the parts? Not in my municipality. You know, I do it all the time, and I've never been cited for it. Now, your laws may vary. I'm not a lawyer. Please consult your lawyer before doctoring your parts. But I will say that Isaac regularly rewrote other people's music to make it easier for his students to play. To quote Captain Dudley Broadstreet, "Turnabout is fair play." In the next video, I'm going to be talking about stuff in the B theme, and particularly the arpeggios. There's a lot of different arpeggiated triads and seventh chords, and I'm going to go over some strategies on how to teach that, and some other cool stuff that you can do with it related to music theory. So I hope to see you in the next video.